If you had $10 million in your account right now, what would you stop doing and what would you start doing? What would you do differently? I find that a very powerful question because it helps identify where fear might be and where real desire might be.
I'm Mark Cook, president of Windfall Partners. We get leaders unstuck and thriving with their teams. After turnarounds as chief executive, the largest ever studies of award-winning leaders, a New York Times bestseller, and 5-star keynotes. I've coached 4,000 client wins at top brands. My Bold Encounters is an advanced system for leading. First, powerful steps on a path forward. Second, problem-solving skills that beat obstacles fast. Now, lead with Bold Encounters today.
Welcome to Bold Encounters. Today I have Pia Leichter, all the way over the ocean in Copenhagen, Denmark. How are you, Pia?
I'm great. Awesome to be here, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Good. I'm so happy you're here. There are a few reasons why I wanted you here. First of all, Pia is a founder of Kollektiv Studio. She's a creative through and through, but she does coaching and she partners with corporations to get the creative juices flowing in a very productive and success-oriented way. But she's also an author of Welcome to the Creative Club. And so she's got a lot of thoughts in those brain cells of hers, and she's done a lot of creativity. Is that about right?
That sounds about right, Mark. You got it. Hit the nail on the head.
I love creative people. I manage some creative people. I never was trained in the creative arts. I was always a marketing and business person in research or leadership. And yet I was put over a few times managing creative people or partnering with them inside and outside. And then I had a little agency and still do some of my own, which I probably shouldn't, as we know. But I just really enjoy the creative side of business. It is so necessary, but so underappreciated in some corners. So I'm really excited to talk to you about this.
I can't wait to dive in.
Yeah. So I want to start at the very beginning. I want to hear how you grew up. You had a really interesting childhood. So tell us about growing up for just a minute.
Sure. I'm a self-professed recovering nomad. I have lived in many different countries. I grew up mostly on the Lower East Side, Manhattan. My father is an abstract painter. He's an artist, and had a loft on the Bowery for 25 years before it became what it is today with Whole Foods, etc. He was one of the first wave of artists that moved in and changed the neighborhood. Really, so it was an interesting time. I grew up on the Bowery when there were CBGBs in the men's shelter and a lot drugs and junks and lots of other things around me, and also Moisha's Diner and a local butcher and things that no longer exist. But it was an interesting time to be in New York City. So my father was there for 25 years, but my mother loved do-overs. So I moved, every couple of years, went to 8 different elementary schools and 8 different high schools. My mom's French Canadian. Wow. My dad's originally from New York City. So New York felt like home because it's where I would return to. But, we lived in Montreal and Ottawa, Puerto Rico, Brooklyn, Pearl Street, boarding school near Vermont, back to Montreal, back to New York, moved around a lot.
All the stimuli that went into your brain from all those stops and all that you learn, it is no wonder that you're creative. You're not quite the person with the history to become an accountant balancing the books at the end of the month, I don't think.
No, oftentimes, moving, sometimes it's chaos, right? It was really chaotic. So creating stories and worlds of my own, I did since I was a kid, was a way of creating that own little safe place, and it felt like it felt like something that I was able to do from a very young age, which I'm really grateful for. So I started when my father was painting. I'd be writing stories about princesses who didn't need a prince to wake up, and all different kinds of things. And I just, created a world of imagination, within these stories and stories about what could be and ideas. And so I think, in life sometimes difficulty or chaos also gives us gifts. So I think that was one of being able to create new worlds and worlds of my own was definitely a gift that came out of that, as well as being able to connect deeply with people, even just for a short period of time, and then learning how to let go was another gift. But at times, of course, I didn't quite see the golden wrapping, in that. But I do firmly believe that we are given what we need to become who we're meant to be.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't always a piece of cake, I know. What were one of the most difficult things you had to face early on in your life, career?
Oh, early on. Okay. Woof. Wow. What is the one? I think one of the most difficult things I had to face was I left my home with my mother's, at least when I was 17. So that was we had a,
wow.
May she rest in love, but we had a contentious relationship, to say the least, to keep it short. Loving, but contentious. And it just wasn't working anymore. So I got kicked out, and she thought I would come back home, and I never did. And that was, school of hard knocks. I learned a lot. Learned a lot about what it would take to survive. I had to stop. I got into college early. I had to stop, and I had to get a job because I had no idea how to balance budgets at all. I spent like $300 on grocery bills. I was the one buying drinks for my friends. Like, I didn't know what I was doing at all. I was a teenager. And then when the money ran out, the loan ran out, I was like, oh my God, I have to get a job. So I got a job at a mall, at a local store, where I got paid every 2 weeks. And I learned really quickly, at least what would happen if I didn't get an education. That's how I felt. Or if I didn't really step up and try to make something more of myself, no matter what it took. And that just lit a fire underneath me. So after a few months of that, and it did give me the chance to learn how to budget and, just a lot of adulting things that you need. I went back to school with a vengeance. Graduated.
I am doing this. If it's the path, if it's the most probable path to have a little easier time in my profession, I'm doing it all in.
Well, absolutely. I think it was also a different time. Like now, I think there's so many different opportunities for how you can create a business for yourself and a life for yourself. University is one option, but there are many others. Back in those days, not to age myself, it felt like that was the path. Like that was the way to kind of secure a more successful and flourishing future. And so went all in. That was graduated magna cum laude and then summa cum laude from NYU later on. So
wow.
Yeah.
And not Po Diddley College in some small town, NYU. That's terrific.
Yeah.
Magna cum laude. Wow.
And then
so
summa.
You hinted that. Oh, wow, yes. So let me ask you about the first one, the takeaways that you got. You mentioned one, like college isn't the only way to go after all that experience early on in your life. But what are some of the other takeaways? Not many of us left home at 17 and made it ourselves and made decisions and mistakes. Tell us some of your big takeaways from that portion of your life.
Well, the biggest takeaway was that I was going to be okay. That I was able, if I remember, I had a roommate at the time. I didn't know her very well, or when everything, not right away, but later on when I was in school and I was down to my last dollar right before I had to get the job. And she did a midnight move on me, which in Montreal, I was in Montreal at the time, you have like your fridge and your stove is not included in any apartment. So she did a midnight move and took the fridge and stove that we both bought. And it was in the middle of winter. And I remember being like, how am I going to survive? What is coming? I don't have any of my loan left. Now I don't even have a fridge and a stove. I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent. And I got I don't drink Coke anymore, but I had like a Coca-Cola, a bottle of it, and I put it outside, in the back door in the snow because I didn't have a fridge, so for it to get cold. And I go to get it. I went and did something else, and I went to go get it, hoping it would be cold, and someone stole it. So because it wasn't the best neighborhood. So I remember
I stole your Coke.
In that, and it was just everything. In that moment, I just, I started crying. I was like, oh my, are you kidding? Excuse my language. Are you kidding me? You know what I mean? How is this happening? And then I started laughing because it almost seemed so comedic, like comical. Like, how could, like, are you really add insult to injury? You get, now there's no Coke. And it was kind of funny because in that moment I experienced so many different emotions, but the overriding feeling was, if I can get through this, I can get through anything. Like, and it felt like freedom. It felt like, yeah, I'm going to figure it out. It's going to be okay. And there was some strength within me that was kind of activated, a little bit of humor. I laughed at myself a little bit, listening to Billie Holiday, tears in my eyes over, the whole situation, and felt deep in my bones that I'm going to get through this, and then I'm going to be so empowered to get through anything. And sometimes, in life and I did, of course, get through it. I'm here right now. As we get older, at least for me, sometimes fear takes more of a hold for some reason. That's been an interesting development. Like, oh my God. And I forget that fearless, strong 17, 18-year-old sitting in that apartment who knew she was going to make it. And I can just tap into her whenever I need an extra shot of courage to do something and remember, hell, I got through that. Of course I can do anything. So that was it was a beautiful lesson to carry with me.
That is a big lesson. It takes many of us decades to finally feel that way, and some don't ever, obviously. But you said something really interesting to me. It seems like you, in the middle of that, as it was developing, before it finally developed, you had a little determination show up that didn't sound like the normal, typical story for the rest of us. What caused that little burst of determination to develop the feeling you just described?
Oh, I think I don't have an easy answer. I think that's always been in me. I think I've needed it, or I've developed it even from a young age. Like, that's also what moving does. Like, when you move a lot, you have to figure stuff out. Like, talk about it in my book, but you have to learn how to shapeshift. You learn how to read a room, you learn how to read energy, you learn how to read a culture, a scene. How am I going to fit into this and not only survive, but thrive? And, those skills kind of had been being developed or designed or percolating from a pretty young age. And that's what I meant about, turning shit into fertilizer, right? Like, sometimes things happen to us, but if we can take those things and turn it into something that can fertilize seeds of whoever we're meant to become, or what we're meant to do, and to kind of see it as, oh, this is something that I'm going through for a reason. Not that I could see it at the time, trust me. When I was 18 sitting in that room, I didn't see that. But in hindsight, at least, it's nice to look back on life and go, oh, even the things that felt like they were the hardest gave me something. It helped me become who I am. And there's sort of an honoring in that, and a more empowerment. And so I think that's just been a part of my story.
Wow. It makes me think, as a parent, I'm a parent of adults now, so they are parenting me mostly. But I had 5 boys, and
wow.
And there was a lot of parenting. Obviously, my wife, because she's so amazing, did much better than I did. But it's interesting to think back, and I don't know that the advice would be, hey, set your child into several elementaries, several junior highs, and several high schools in several different cities each. But it's interesting. I hear when we ask a young person in some setting, it could be a community setting or religious setting, sometimes young people are asked to say a few things about life. And it's interesting how they always go to their thing, well, I'm on the football team, blah, 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 or I'm in the art, I'm in the dance company. They're always going to their thing, and sometimes it's academic and, school, blah. And it's interesting. It makes me think, as a parent back then, you'd almost want to push your child briefly into a lot of different spaces, even within their experience in school and outside this school, not to over-program them and commit them to full seasons of things, but the more places, the more, as you say, rooms they have to enter and read, sounds like, and situations and challenges that they actually have to get on top of at least a small success. Wow, we'd be doing you a favor, because that was very noticeable to me when you described your situation. There was a little, and you were determined and kind of had this faith that you were going to figure out that you could survive. You didn't even know it yet, but you were going to develop it. That's a very, very big lesson that they inadvertently taught you.
Definitely.
Jumping around everywhere.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, as things progressed, and you were ruling the college scene, obviously, but at some point you started to feel like your career, or at least the next meaningful job that would have some staying power in life. Tell us about that stage of adulting that you mentioned. So here we go. What was that all about, and what was it like?
Growing up, seeing my father, who was, a full-time artist, that's what he did. He's both my hero and my warning signal, especially as a kid, because financially it's tough. It's a tough life. He dealt blackjack for the mob on the side sometimes. He worked as a security guard at the Met. He did horse and buggy in Central Park. He was a merchant marine. He did whatever he could to allow himself to paint. And I witnessed that as a kid. And I think it imprinted a belief that, if you color outside of society's prescriptive lines, you're going to have to pay a rebellion tax, And I didn't want that I didn't want to pay that tax. It felt really heavy to me. And so I decided I wanted to work in a creative realm, but I wasn't just going to become a writer, right? That felt too scary. See, it's scary for me. But I ended up going into commercial creativity. I found my way in. It's a weird, it's life also happens like that. But I will say this. That's what I saw as a child, but then as I got older, I'm able to see that my dad is a fantastic, gifted, amazing painter. Might not always have been the best businessman. So it's sometimes the story is more nuanced, but that's as children or even adolescents, what we see, we might interpret in a certain way. So that was my interpretation, and that colored the direction that I took, or how I wanted to use creativity. I actually did my undergrad in language, literature, arts, and sciences, interdisciplinary, and then I did my master's in global affairs, international relations, because I felt I could use communication / creativity for good in the world. And after I graduated, I had an internship at the UNDP and Coalition for the International Criminal Court, and did a lot of different things. I got an opportunity to work on a contract role in the communications and marketing department at the UNDP in New York. Contract role, salary, big loan on my back. It was not secure, not huge. And I thought, oh gosh, okay, this is not, it's good in paper, but I don't think that's what I want for myself. And then I had an opportunity to produce an economic documentary in Bahrain. I decided to do that. So what I thought would be a very creative experience ended up being I needed to produce the documentary, which meant I needed to sell ad space in the Middle East to do that. And that's not what I had intended, especially coming after like international relations, thinking I'm going to change the world. And boom, I find myself in the Middle East selling ad space. And it was just like, how did I get here? But it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about sales. It taught me a lot, once again, being in a very different environment. And yeah, so it was baptism by fire for sure. And that lasted around 8 months. And then I went to London. And in London, because of my global affairs, multiculturalism, working in different fields. I also was a journalist in Sri Lanka after I did my undergrad. So, I had been doing a lot of different things. The red thread was creativity or communication. There was a brand agency, creative agency in London that was working on a global campaign involving young people going back way past 20 years ago. So it was ahead of its time in the energy challenge conversation around what environment, energy demands, because it's the younger people who are going to live with the energy choices we make today. And they needed someone with my kind of unique profile. And so, boom, got hired to work on a very particular creative campaign and project back in those days. And I found myself in a brainstorm for the first time ever and coming up with ideas with my colleagues. And I just remember thinking in that moment, like, God, this is fantastic. I get paid for this. You know, it was just great. You know, it was creative strategy, it was problem solving, it was writing, it was visual direction, it was so many things. And that's what started my career in the creative agency world. And that's where I stayed and worked as a creative director and creative strategist and copywriter for at least 15 years beyond, for some of the biggest brands in the world, won some awards, judged award ceremonies, and it ended up being a very rewarding career path for me until I hit a ceiling.
It wasn't.
Until it wasn't.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I can see you showing up on that team as a polymath who's lived in several different countries and schools and every phase of your childhood. And I'll bet you had some ideas that they didn't have. And let's see, I'll just go sell in the Middle East advertising too, because I'm sure you learned that in your linguistic education at NYU.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, it's just, you've done a lot of things, and all those experiences create these ideas and thoughts that are just packed into your brain. It's just perfect for a creative partner like you. It's interesting. It makes me think sometimes. I've been in a lot of meetings where I can just see on faces. You know, you have the creatives over there, or around the room, and there's always one that's particularly valuable, and all the business people or just workers that showed up to get a job at a lower level are in the meeting too, and the super creative person will start talking about ideas, and you'll see people's faces light up like, oh my gosh, like, that is an idea person, and my brain is not an idea brain. I'm not an idea person. And they fail to realize that while we can't replicate the polymath and the top of your class and moving everywhere and all that, a mere effort to get outside of that room and spend and invest even a couple mornings going to people and places and adjacent experts instead of the same old experts you always talk to, and get some experience around whatever the specific problem is you're trying to solve or opportunity you're trying to create for, can do wonders. And then all of a sudden you go, I've had this experience with clients over and over, they get back to the meeting and all of a sudden they're the idea person.
Exactly.
Because they've physically experimented, or they've done the race with the race team, or they've been in the experience and put themselves in multiple ways to gain insights and impressions, instead of just showing up thinking it's about IQ, which is not at all the case.
Absolutely. And that is why one of the reasons I wrote Welcome to the Creative Club, because it smashes the myth that creativity is reserved for the chosen few. Yeah. And invites everyone to access and apply their innate creativity. We all are creative, naturally. We just might forget, and we need to remember. And I like the remembering example you just gave. Well, it's going and talking to different people, being in different environments, and then getting inspired and coming up with ideas, creating evidence that, of course, I'm creative. Look, I just created this idea. I mean, we're creating all the time. Maybe we're not always consciously creating, but we're in constant creation. We are creative beings. It's our very essence. And what stops us being creative is the idea or belief that I'm not creative. That will block you right away.
And it's kind of where we started a bit, where, you can certainly go and get on the internet and find some ideas. You can GPT it to death. That's great. But it's not at all the same as going into the space of the problem, going to the people that want to solve the problem and investigating the problems and the opportunities they have, and going into other people that have done something similar but totally different, but for the same type of people or in the same sort of way, and just really getting different ways of thinking about this. I've seen so many times someone go from the young professional getting patted on the head by the executive in the room because their idea wasn't great, or they didn't say anything, or they had a bad idea, to doing all these things and gaining the experience in a pretty short order of time, and coming back and have far more context than that executive would ever dream of having, and suddenly being the expert that gets to not be pat on the head but congratulated, maybe advanced, or at least given the opportunity to execute in a different direction. So tell us, this is a great book. Everyone should read it. I'll give you a chance to give us the information about where to find it at the end. And I want you to say for a minute maybe your very best practical advice. But tell us about your book and tell the audience what they're in for, and some of your very most important lessons and some of your favorite parts of your book, if you could.
Sure. Well, it's called Welcome to the Creative Club, Make Life Your Biggest Art Project. And my editor said, if you're inviting people to make life their biggest art project, then you better make this book your biggest art project. So we had a structure, but we broke some rules, or we did things in a creative way, in a different way.
Shocking.
Yeah, shocking. Exactly. And so it's actually a mix of memoir, personal stories of how I lost and found my creative power, because I think that that happens to many of us, right? We have it, then we forget or we lose it, and through different moments in life, different things we go through. And I have rebellious tendencies, so I don't really like when people tell me how to do things. I'd rather you show me how you did it. And that was very important for me for the tone of the book. It's not me telling you how to do anything. It's me, I'm inviting you. I'm showing you how I did it. And maybe there's some inspiration that comes from that. Or maybe there's a different perspective. Or maybe there's a bit of newer, I also have neuroscience research and interviews and poems. And I create many different doors that invites people back into their innate creativity, so that they can design their lives with it. Because to me, there's nothing more creative than designing your experience of life. I can't think of anything more creative. So it's really an invitation to become the creative director of your life. Okay, you get to direct the scene. You get to write or rewrite the script, but first you have to be aware of what script is running in the background, right? You get to do the set design. You get to make the score. You get to choose the costumes. I mean, you produce the whole thing. It's just becoming aware that you're sitting in that director's chair. You've always been a member.
Picking your cast is
that too
possible in some
totally
instances. Not easy, but yeah.
No, I mean,
thought.
Yeah. So I think it's really about empowerment and welcome to the club is tongue in cheek, because you've always been a member. I'm just inviting you to rediscover that the Creative Club card has been in your back pocket all along. You just need to use it and swipe it frequently. And there are different ways that people can do that. But the first step is realizing that creativity is our birthright. It's not a special gift, and it's not just reserved for artists. It's not just artistic expression. Sure, artistic expression is one very big, component of what we call creativity, but it's just one. Science is immensely creative. I remember reading a academic journal, an article, and the researcher posited that crime is also very creative, which is like, oh yeah, I never thought of that. Crime actually is quite creative. So it's like everything we do. And the closer you get to your unique signature, to who you are, to how you move in the world, to what you're being drawn to create and do, to your unique expression, the more creative you are, because there's no one like you. There's only one Mark, There's no one like you. So coming closer to who you are and creating from that place is such a novel, original way of moving, being, and designing your experience and whatever it is that you want to create in the world. because it's by default original, because there's no one like you. So the closer you come to your core, the more creative your expression.
Well, anyone who knows identical twins knows that that is absolutely true, because even they are very different if you know them well. I think this is so beautiful, and I want to respectfully ask you to give us a few spoilers and hardcore lessons that we can take action to do what you just said this week, but not yet. I want to ask you first about your transition. You were working in the agency. I'm sure that the deadlines were simple, easy, and flexible. That's a sarcastic comment. But you were taking care, you're servicing the loan on your back, etc. And then it wasn't the right thing anymore. Describe that a little bit, and then where you went after. Tell us that phase before we dive into the advice.
Well, I think sometimes what stops us from change or taking big leaps or even small leaps is comfort. And sometimes there's nothing really wrong with what you're doing. Like, there's nothing wrong with what I was doing. It was something I did for a very long time. I was very good at. I was successful, but it just wasn't lighting me up anymore, because it became very known after well over a decade of doing it. I knew where the ceiling was, where the walls were, what the floor was. I knew what was expected, what was going to happen to a certain degree, even when the clients changed and the briefs were different. And I was yearning for something more. I was yearning for a more expansive experience. I was really curious. There was a part of me, at least, was really curious about what I might create if there was no walls, no ceiling, no floor. And it was just, uncertain and open. What would I do? And that feels really scary. So it becomes harder to take a jump when it's comfortable and there's nothing really, quote unquote, wrong. And that's where my mother's passing comes in, because when that happened, it's like, well, waiting for what? It's now. It's now. And the loans that had been paid off a long time ago, that was fine. It wasn't about that. I mean, of course it's about security, because leaving a salary and moving into entrepreneurship is a big jump. But I took it because I thought, what do I have to be scared of? I'm going to die anyway one day. I might as well live while I have this life. So
you had a fear removal with that experience, it sounds like. Let me ask you this about it, see if you agree. Going back before you got the courage again and this determination that is really unique to you, I think, there was that moment where you were feeling comfortable, but it wasn't lighting you up. And a lot of times people talk about passionate work and being lit up and the feelings that they want. And what we don't talk about is the consequence of that, because it's a very selfish sounding thing. Like, I should enjoy work. Well, yes, but there is a reason besides that we want you to be happy and have fun at work, because work is about work, and work should be doing something besides just having fun. And so one of the things that I've seen is when I or someone else loses that passion or that spark or that excitement about at least a majority of the tasks that you're doing, or some of the tasks that you're doing, you're not delivering the type of work for others, the customers, the internal customers, the people. You're not delivering all that you can deliver. And it degrades your value, because what you're delivering is just not as good as it should be, because you just aren't feeling it in the flow. And so the importance of going and finding the flow, or of finding the spark again, is so that you can be all that you can be for other people too, not just so that you can be at Disneyland.
I'm gonna challenge that.
I'd love to hear your thoughts.
At least that's one interpretation, but that's not what I experienced. What I experienced was, I'm always going to give my best wherever I am. So it wasn't a matter of me not having fun and being like, this is not interesting me. No, I still loved what I did, and I did it well, and I did it with a full heart. I didn't do it half-ass. I continued to partner and respect my role and loved what I did, but there was something more that was calling me. And those two things can be true. We can hold those two realities. We can hold the reality of I'm showing up fully, and yes, there's a part of it that still feels right and good, okay? But yet there's something bigger that feels like it's calling me. So it's not just about fun.
Right.
But lighting me up is good. Like, it's good to feel there was something more that was calling me. That's it. That doesn't debase or make me perform less or make me be, in the role I was in. It just meant that there was something more. I couldn't break the feeling that there was something more, and I needed the courage to figure out what that would be for me, was very, very strong. And that was that's what it was. And work can be whatever we want it to be. Work can be fun. It doesn't mean there's some tasks that sometimes are going to feel like, oh Lord. I mean, anyone doing expenses, it doesn't feel like fun. It depends what you like to do. I personally never like doing my expense sheets or logging my hours back in the day. I don't do that in the same way anymore, but it's like, yeah, it doesn't mean there's confetti being thrown in every moment, but we can make work whatever we want it to be. Like, work doesn't have to be one way, and it doesn't have to be all fun, and it doesn't have to be all duty or responsibility either. We can make it whatever we want it to be. But my case was yes, I'm doing these things. Yes, I'm fully involved. Yes, it still feels good to an extent. It's what I built up to, but there's something more on the other side, and I don't want to perish without knowing what that is. Well, I want to know what might be possible if I had the courage to leap and build my own thing. That just felt like it was knocking on my door, and I didn't have the courage to answer until my mother helped give me that kick in the peach. What are you waiting for? What's the worst that could happen? What's the worst that could happen? Doesn't work out. Okay, I'll come back from that. And so far, entrepreneurship has been. The meta lesson of entrepreneurship is learning how to build my capacity to be in uncertainty. Because life is uncertain. That's it. Anything can happen at any moment. And sometimes being in, a salaried position can make it feel more certain. At least it did for me. I'm certain that I will get this salary, but it's not certain. I could get fired. Anything could happen. It's an illusion of certainty. And so entrepreneurship gave me the gym or the playing field to reshape my relationship with life and uncertainty. I get to choose. I get to choose to trust. I get to choose to lean in. I get to figure out how I want to be when I don't know what's coming. And that feels like freedom to me. And it also feels like creativity. When we sit down to create, we don't know what we're going to create. We have to be able to be in the uncertainty and play with it. Let's see. I don't know. Let's find out. Because uncertainty is also the realm of infinite possibility. Anything is possible. And that's also what's scary. It's frightening. Oh, anything can happen. Yeah. It can feel very frightening. Yeah, it can. But it can also feel thrilling because anything is possible. And I want to live in that space.
Yeah. Well, you've been raised and you've had a life to live in that space. I love the importance that you put on the word "and." I mean, what you're talking about when you gave your perspective on it is, you can have both. You can have and "and" is a conjunction. It's a throwaway word sometimes, but you're saying you can have both. You can do both. And then the calling, it is literally calling to you in a silent way. And it wants you to do something, and that is also a great motivation to move and do something different, whether it's in the walls of where you are or get out of the country to a different place, whatever it's needed.
And
go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, the good news is once we take a leap, I believe we all have leaps that we really would love to take at some point at different junctures, right? When the first leap feels really, really scary and like, oh, what's going to happen? But then you're building your muscle. Your leg muscles get stronger. You know you're going to hit the ground. You're not going to break your leg because you did it. You did the big leap. And then the next time an opportunity to leap comes, it still feels challenging, but not as challenging as the first time because you're building your capacity, you're building your muscles. And it allows us to move forward into spaces we're being called to with more courage and more.
That is for sure.
And that's exciting. And that's also creative to me. That
is for sure. You know, one of the examples of what you're talking about is maybe not creativity, but more the communications part of your mind. I have clients that are absolutely terrified to talk to strangers in the wrong setting. It's great if they're at some fundraiser or something, but if they're trying to do work and they just don't see it as their role, they're supposed to talk to their teams and their people and such. And it's so interesting to me. There are a few things that I do with them that I won't detail here, but there's a few things I do with them where they literally have to go find new information out, and they have to actually talk to strangers and do it in proximity, not on a Zoom, and do it for real. And it's funny, it is terrifying, but if you know how to do it and if you go through the steps, it's not really as scary as they make it. But what's even more interesting is that, if, like you're saying, if they do it maybe for an hour and they've done it maybe a dozen times, they never have that fear again. They just don't have that fear again. And what an amazing fear to get rid of in life, to interact with people that are new. So it is such an important thing, what you're saying. You just do these uncomfortable things and they become okay. And the fears melt most of the time. And, you know, it's funny. I feel your energy and your personality. And it reminds me of when I had a lot of fear. And another solution is just going and finding a couple people in your life. And maybe you haven't had this type of conversation ever or for a long time. Or someone new that has, you know, like an accountant or a financial planner, or someone that's not selling you things, and find those people, and you will often find that your fears are misplaced, and that the standard, as you talked about, the standard track that we're all supposed to go on when we're getting jobs and leaving jobs and things like that. A lot of them, like Cobra's insurance, like when I went and looked at that, it was like 5 times more expensive than just going and getting my own through the right place. And yet we're also scared of all these things that could happen, and a lot of them are just not real. They're just fear.
I mean, what is it? I think it's from Dune. Is it false evidence appearing real?
Yeah.
I mean, that's right. And see, for fear, when we move towards what has meaning for us, but it's new and it's unknown and it's uncomfortable, it's a growth opportunity. It's where we get to grow into our next creative version of ourselves and our lives. And when it's the stretch, and when we move through it or with the fear, it feels incredibly rewarding. And the fear changes shape. And, you know, it might come up, like I just came back from Bali for my birthday. And I want to do things as I get older, I want to do things for the first time again. Like I want to be very intentional about having new first times. And new first times are inherently scary because I've never done it before. So I wanted to learn how to surf. I don't know why, but I've never surfed before. And I just want to learn how to surf. And
it's
I don't know.
It's fun when you learn.
Well, I don't know.
It's hard. It's hard.
I had an image of what it would be in my head. I don't know. I thought it would be like, woohoo, I'm just that. No, it's not that at all. And so I did it. I went by myself, and, you know, I met the surf coach, and it's a lot of work, you know, and he was behind me, and so I'm on the surfboard, and then you have to, like, you know, stand up, and when the wave was coming, I can't see it, he'd go paddle, 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 then he would stand up, you know, he'd scream, stand up. And then my brain just wasn't like connecting with my body to like stand up because I was getting scared. I was scared. And it was interesting because in that moment I was kind of very aware of my fear. Like I was like, oh, I'm really scared. What am I scared? What am I scared of? Oh, really what I'm scared of is the unknown. I don't know what happens when I stand up. I don't know if I'm going to hit my head. I've never done this before. I don't know. I just don't know what's going to happen. And it was really interesting to kind of sit outside of myself for that moment in such a kind of mundane situation as like learning how to surf and be like, oh, that's all the fear is. It's like, I don't know what it's going to be. And that's scary because it could be anything and it's okay. And then I was like, just keep doing it. And then I dropped the idea that I had to be good. That's a very helpful thing for creativity. Like, it doesn't have, you don't have to be good. I don't have to like, woohoo, and doesn't matter what the coach thinks I'm terrible. It doesn't matter. Just keep trying and just have fun with it. Like, don't worry about it. This is me pep talking myself. And you know what? After at least 7 tries of like, stand up, or like falling down, standing up, falling, the fear dissipated. It was still there, but it was not as sharp as the first time. And I actually did stand up, even if it was really awkwardly, not elegant at all. I did, and I was really proud of myself. And I think, it made me feel good. So I think growth equals kind of fulfillment. I think we are naturally expansive, changeable, fluid beings. It's part of our nature. We're part of nature. Nature is changing. The universe is constantly expanding. We're also that. And it gives a great sense of fulfillment to see that, yeah, of course I could do that. And I'm fine. And so I want more opportunities where there's a desire and there's a little bit of fear. And I'm able, because it makes me feel very alive. And what's the point of living if not to feel alive? So more of that, because it's a good practice. Because one day there's going to be something that's much bigger that scares me, that's unknown, but it has meaning for me. And I want to keep moving into those spaces because I've discovered they're incredibly creative and fulfilling spaces to inhabit. Yeah.
It's a beautiful thought, beautiful story, and I had a similar experience. I wasn't that scared to stand up; I just couldn't. But it is true. You don't have to be a YouTuber, a movie star, surfing. And you find out that if you pull it off, even a whitewater surf is better than any boogie board or body surf. I mean, it's just so much more exhilarating to be standing, keeping the balance, even in a whitewater situation. So you don't have to be a champion surfer. Before we finish, I want to try to accomplish 2 things. I want to hear what you define as a big success that you've had in your life to this point, and then what you're looking for in the future. And then second, I want you to give us a few spoilers on this book, or from your life and your practice. The second question will be, what are the big to-dos this week for our audience to be more creative and to find a more creative life's work that brings more fulfillment? So book spoilers, advice.
Okay, book spoilers first? Is that what you want to?
Yeah.
Yeah? Well,
tell us the great ideas in the book, a couple of them.
Well, I'm just going to say this. If you're feeling the nudge, the pull, the call to do something different, to take that leap, to make that jump, and you need that, maybe it's not a push, but it's just feeling that hand on your back, knowing you're not alone in it, and knowing that there are different ways of looking at it, different ways of being with it, different ways of figuring out what that vision might be and what that first step might look like. It's not a spoiler, but that's why I wrote my book. I wrote the book for people who are in those sticky junctures at those moments where they're feeling like there's something bigger calling for them. It might feel stuck, could be that, but it could also feel like talking to myself quite a few years ago, that there's something else that's calling you, but you're not quite sure what that something else is or how to take that first step or what a leap might look like. And that's who I wrote my book for. It's not necessarily a spoiler, but it's an invitation.
An invitation, a nudge to your calling.
That's right.
I love it. Yeah. Okay. Now, tell us, let's imagine that we're, 30, 40 years old. We're not brand new in work life, but we're trying to make a living. And your steps. What should we do first, second, third, so to speak, this week?
To do what? To become more creative? To what?
To just find the success in that calling. Find the calling for the calling. What should we do if we're feeling stuck and we just don't know what to do?
Well, I would first just take a step back to try to not try to figure it out, not to have to figure it out, not to create the 5-year plan. Just pause that. That can come if you want it, but to get curious about yourself first. So maybe curiosity for me is supported by powerful questions. So asking yourself some powerful questions. I like this one a lot. This helped me at different points in time. If you had $10 million in your account right now, what would you stop doing? And what would you start doing? What would you do differently? What would you stop doing at all? Like what would you say, oh, I have 10 million, I'm not doing this anymore, but I'm going to do this instead. What would that be? I find that a very powerful question, because it helps identify where fear might be and where real desire might be.
That's a great question. That's a powerful question.
And I've asked myself that at different points, just to check in with my own motivations, to check in what's driving me. Is it fear of survival, scarcity, or is it real desire? And when I answer like, no, I would stop doing that, well, stop doing that now. I don't need $10 million. That's not aligned. But it's a great kind of alignment check-in question over what's motivating what your actions at this point. With no judgment, just curiosity, no judgment, nothing wrong. The other thing one could do if you're, I mean, I like this question a lot, so I'll just throw it out there. You know, in your wildest imaginings, what are you doing in a year from now? And I invite people to create multiple futures, because sometimes we get stuck. We get stuck if there's only one thing, like one wild imagining that I'm supposed to do. And then, you know, if I write it down or if I name it, then it has to become a plan. Then I have to do it successfully. Then, oh God, no, that we're just imagining. We're just playing. It's just curiosity. So then imagine 3 wildest futures in a year from now. It could be anything. Where do you see yourself? What are you doing? Who are you with? What does it feel like?
Yeah, I love those. I think that there's something that happens mentally to the average Joe and Jane that if you think that you understand the question, then you kind of feel like you've already answered it, but you haven't. On both those cases, like just because we listened to what you just said, there's a sense like, oh yeah, that would be easy, and so I kind of already done it, and I understand what it. But we haven't. You have to actually imagine the vision. You actually have to imagine the answer, and yes, maybe even write it down. And like you say, it doesn't need to become the plan immediately. Like no. It's just a building block or an experiment to be part of it if it fits. And that's a great couple of questions.
Yeah, and then get curious again. Get curious again. So let's say you just suspend your own judgment. You do the wildest imaginings, and you're like, I'm going to do 3 possible futures in a year from now. Like if I could do anything, this is where I'd be. Okay, then look, which one is calling you the most? Which one is speaking to you the most? Okay, what is one needle moving action you could take today that moves you closer to that direction in that year? One thing you could do today. One needle. It could be micro, it could be macro, it could be anything you want it to be. One step. What might that be? And then when will you do it? So
just do it today, do it tomorrow if it's midnight right now.
Yeah.
But do it one small thing.
What or big thing. Could be whatever, it could be whatever you want it to be.
Love it.
And that's a way of actioning a vision.
I love it. Great advice. Tell us where to find you and to find this great book.
Best place to find me is kollektiv.studio. That's where you can find out more about my work, about my book, and about potential collaborations. Welcome to the Creative Club is available on Amazon.com, on bookshop.org, on Barnes & Noble. So whatever retailer floats your boat should be there.
Pia Leichter, founder, Kollektiv Studio, author. Welcome to the Creative Club. and your creative partner and coach. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me today, Mark.
Thank you for joining us to get leaders unstuck and thriving with their teams. You've heard a little bit about the power of bold encounters and leadership. Watch on. Go to full episodes with the iconic expert interviews at markspencercook.com/podcast. And please subscribe. My site takes you directly to YouTube video and podcast versions. Please make comments. Share this with your friends. Also, reach out to us to just brainstorm your priorities, challenges, events, or how bold encounters might help. Visit windfallpartners.com. Click the Let's Talk button without obligation and reach out. I look forward to speaking. Thank you for joining us. Now, let's lead with bold encounters today.